Web content management systems are predominantly designed for the management of content destined for the internet, as the name would indicate. When web content management systems first came onto the market, they were designed to remove the bottleneck of an HTML developer in order to get things out in the internet. It became evident very, very quickly when the internet started to expand that information needed to get out to the internet quickly and effectively. And if you had either a HTML developer or a team of developers through whom all modifications had to go, all of a sudden things started to slow down, and getting small modifications were taking an awful lot of time. So web content management systems were brought in to deal with that. One of the secondary means or reasons for a web content management system is for the establishment of online governance. So as soon as people started in with web content management systems, they realized that they had other issues. They needed to ensure that not only the content itself was structured, but the presentation was standardized. So if you had different people doing different modifications, they might put it up in slightly different ways, or they might structure the content, they might miss pieces of content, etc. So web content management systems can ensure that your information is always structured the same and it's always presented the same. And from an end user perspective, you can see the value for that. They also have the ability of controlling who can access and who can do what in a system. So if you have users who can only read, or if you want users to be able to write, or other users who want to be able to prove, you have that ability to split up different roles and give different capabilities to different users. As more and more organizations started to use these, and more people within organizations started to participate, it became important to ensure that there was an appropriate approval process. So workflow all of a sudden became very, very important. And these can range from very rudimentary, simply giving a role to somebody, to very in-depth business process management systems. And we can get into a little bit of that in another video segment. And lastly, web content management systems have version control to them. So if you are making a modification, you make a mistake, you want to revert back to a previous version, you have the capability of doing that, and that can be really a time saver for something like that. Now, when I sit down with an organization and we start looking at web content management, the first thing I try to assess is, what category of web content management are we really looking at? There's all sorts of different flavors, and it's easy to kind of get into the wrong category of web content management system. And I have kind of 4 buckets of web content management systems that I look at. Marketing, data-driven, e-commerce, and cloud computing, and I'll talk a little bit about these. So first, marketing. Marketing is for those individuals that have a website where the primary focus is for marketing purposes, getting information out there about the products or services, etc. In that situation, there's not so much a focus on structured content. It's more about presentation. Perhaps there's a lot of rich media, or a lot of photos, etc. But between page and page, there's not a lot of consistency because they want to apply different marketing focuses on different pages. But there is a very page-centric focus to the editing. I have content, I want it to go on this particular page, I want it displayed in this particular way. And in those circumstances, there's a sort of a genre of web content management that do that job very, very well, particularly if you want to give marketing people or business people control over the formatting of that content, which normally you would have to have an HTML developer to do. So the focus becomes more on enabling more sophisticated layouts for non-technical people. The next that I mentioned was data-driven, and in these types of websites, there is a real separation between the content and the display. The content becomes highly structured, and the placement of that information on the website is logic-based. What normally happens is you will author a particular piece of content. And let's just use a blog site, for example. A blog site is an example of a data-driven website. The blog represents the content. When you add a blog to your website, you're not adding it to a particular page, you're adding it in a content entry template. which is structured as to, the title, when it was authored, a small description or byline, the main copy of the blog, etc. And then the presentation of that is controlled by the system. So it will likely display the most current blog first in a reverse order. But there's many other types of examples of things like that. So like self-help type sites, etc., where the focus is on the particular piece of content. The system controls where it gets put on the site. Now, the third, e-commerce, is similar to that in that it is data-driven. We've got information about the products. They're highly structured. It is up to business rules that determines where they get displayed. So there might be the ability to look at a product category, and the system will pick out all the products of that category and display them. Where it differs from data-driven systems, there's two differences. The first is that e-commerce systems need to be able to execute a financial transaction, right? And other data-driven sites don't have that capability. And secondly, where they differ from data-driven sites is they have very complex rules about product configuration and inventory. So, for example, if I've got 100 t-shirts and I sell those 100 t-shirts, the system knows that there's only 100 t-shirts. I'm going to remove them from the list of things that are available to purchase. Or it might know that the white t-shirts cost less than the red t-shirts. So those types of rules are generally built into e-commerce systems, at least the leading e-commerce systems. And then you don't have to worry about those. Now, the last category of web content management is cloud computing. And in these circumstances, we've got what would traditionally be a computer application that you would install in your computer, but it's designed to be used over the internet. So it runs on a server and you interact with it in your browser. Now, you might say, what does that have to do with web content management? Well, the issue is that behind the scenes, there's still content that needs to be managed. But because they are highly sophisticated applications that are very, very unique, usually you're not going to be able to find a web content management system off the shelf that you can simply roll out and have it do what you want to do. Now, what you will find is a variety of different frameworks that can help in the development of a web-based application. And again, there's a number of different factors that go into the selection, depending on what your particular needs are. So those are just a couple different categories of things to kind of keep in mind. And there are, like I said, are specific products that excel at each one of those. So it's important when you're starting out to see, okay, which one of those do I fit into best? And then start to look at products in that particular category.